Salaam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What would you do if you forgot to ruku in your salat? Ruku means bowing. If you forgot to bow in salat, so what would you do? It is very simple. First thing you need to know is that ruku is one of the pillars of salat. So pillars, this is what made your salat stand. Without pillar, your salat will be invalid. Am I communicating? So, any pillar of salat, just memorize it this way. Any pillar of salat, be it bowing or prostrating or sitting or standing, all these are pillars of salat. So, if you should miss any of these in salat or you left them out, just know that your salat will be invalid. So, now you forgot. You forgot to bow. As long as you are still praying, then there is a solution. But if you've completed your salat, you've done praying, and you remember that, you left out pillar from the salat, just know that you have to repeat that salat again. But in salat itself, you are still praying, and then you remember that you haven't done, or you left out a pillar, like the bowing. Now, what should you do in salat itself? As long as you remember that you left out a pillar, whatever you are doing, and you remember that you left out bowing, you need to leave that thing you are doing and return to what you left out, the pillar you left out. Let me explain better. Give you an example. Let's say you are reciting surah, like the Quran, you are reciting the Quran. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, up, down, like that. You've completed Surah-Fatiha. Then, in the first rakah, you recited another surah after Surah-Fatiha. Now, what is the next thing to do? Is to bow. Say, Allahu Akbar. Instead of bowing, you prostrated. You are in the state of prostration now. You now remember that, I haven't bowed. What should you do? Now you are prostrating. You remembered in that prostration that you left out bowing. What should you do? Just stand up from that prostration and bow immediately. Am I communicating? Bow immediately, and then you continue your salat after it. Then you prostrate, and then at the end of the salat, salam alaikum, you have to do SUJUD SAHW after salam. So that is how to compensate. If you forget to bow and you are in the state of prostration, just leave the prostration alone, return to bowing, and then you bow, and then you continue your salat after it. Let's say, for instance, you are not in the same unit you forgot. Now, you prostrated. You've completed the first unit. You stood up. Now you are in the second unit. You continued. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. You are in the recitation of Surah-Fatiha. In the second unit, second rakah, you now remember that in my first rakah, I forgot to bow. And now you are in the second rakah reciting Surah-Fatiha. What would you do? You have to do the same thing. You have to leave the recitation of Surah-Fatiha and bow immediately. So that bow in is a must. Nothing can be without leaving that thing for without returning to what you forgot. Are you getting my point? Even if you are reciting Surah-Fatiha in the second unit, as long as you forgot to bow in the first unit, don't continue the recitation of Surah-Fatiha. Just bow immediately, and then you continue your salat after it. And that bow-in will still be your first unit. Because the first unit you did before will be cancelled. And now that you remembered will be your first unit. You bow, and then you stand up, you rise from bowing, you prostrate, you sit between the prostrations, you prostrate again. That is the completion of the first unit. And now you can now stand up for the second unit. Then at the end of the salat, you do SUJUD SAHW after salam. Am I communicating? So, another example I want to give you now is that you are praying. You recite in the first rakah, first unit, after the recitation of the Quran. Instead of bowing, you prostrated. Am I communicating? You prostrated. And then, till you got to the second unit, the second rakah. Now you are in the second rakah. You recited the Quran and now you bowed. Allahu Akbar. This is the second rakah, right? So you now remember that, oh, you are in the same place you forgot. You are bowing in the second rakah. You now remember that in the first rakah, you forgot to bow. What would you do? Just continue with the bowing. And now you make this second rakah your first rakah. So the first rakah you did will be cancelled. And this second one will now be your first rakah. Because you are in the same place. If you are in the same place you forgot, then you make that your first rakah. But if you haven't gotten to the same place you forgot, maybe you are in the prostration, you remember that you didn't bow in the first rakah. You are in the prostration in the first rakah. You remember that you didn't bow in the first rakah. You need to stand up from prostration and bow. If you are in the second rakah, you are reciting Surah-Fatiha. You remember that, oh, I did not bow in my first rakah. You need to leave that recitation of Surah-Fatiha and bow. And if you are in the state of bowing in the second rakah, you don't need to return to anything. Just keep bowing. You cancel the first one and make the second rakah your first rakah. Am I communicating? And at the end of it, you have to do SUJUD SAHW after Salah. So that is how to compensate if you forget from any pillars of Salah, be it prostration, sitting, or standing. If you forget any pillars of Salah, this is how to compensate, because your Salat will be invalid if you don't do the pillar. You can't continue your Salat without doing the pillar. No pillar should be left out. Am I communicating? Any pillar, if you hear pillars of Salat, it shouldn't be left out. If you are in sujud, prostration, you remember that, oh, I did not recite Surah-Fatiha. You need to leave that sujud and stand up to recite Surah-Fatiha. If you are in sujud, you forgot to RUKU, you have to leave that sujud and RUKU. Then you continue your salat after it. At the end of the salat, you do SUJUD SAHW after salam. Are you getting it? So I hope you understand my explanation. Barakallahu fikum, jazakumullahu khairan, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.